So welcome back and hello if you are new. This is my second instalment of my Albums of the Year series, following on from last week's really quite difficult list to put together. I feel like this year has just been ridiculously hard. There's so many great releases that have come out, and especially towards the end of the year, which is where I'm actually going to be kicking off my next choice, which was a complete sleeper hit for me. It came out of nowhere, to be totally honest, and that is Every Time I Die, Radical.
It's almost unbearable, honestly terrible. We're in the golden age of past.
I'm not joking. When this album came out, I listened to it probably for about 8 hours that day. It's got that ferocity that we saw on From Parts Unknown and X Lives, you know, like Underwater Bimbos from Outer Space and tracks like that, but has that sort of like bluesy swagger that I loved about New Junk Aesthetic and also The Big Dirty. Really, it's kind of a great idea of, you know, what Every Time I Die is. And of course, they're sort of, you know, moving things on as they did on Map Change. There's, you know, like Thing with Feathers. There's a really interesting kind of couple of guest appearances from Josh Scogin, who was formerly of The Chariot and now the 68. And then also Andy Hull from Manchester Orchestra, another band that I really enjoyed and discovered this year. It's definitely Keith Buckley's strongest release. You know, I've always thought that he's probably one of the best lyricists there's ever been in hardcore, but there's just so many like Keithisms on here. I don't know, it's like, it's all in his delivery. There's this kind of like sardonic, sort of sarcastic wit that he's so good at delivering. And also one of the things I love about this record is that it really gets me fucking pumped up. Like, anytime I listen to it, you know, like Desperate Pleasures. And then that bit, you know, where he says, there's so many ghosts around, but not much spirit. It's genius, those kind of turns of phrase. I'm so glad that I actually listened to this record. So I basically discovered this band watching YouTube, to be totally honest. I'd never really heard of them before. They're quite a small underground DIY band from Italy. And they're sort of, I guess they exist in the realms of Immolation, Ulcerate, Gorguts, that kind of thing. But what really drew me to them was the fact that everything was so DIY. You know, they made their own instruments, they made their own pedals, their own guitar amps, and they even made their own unique tuning for this album. It's not necessarily the easiest record to listen to, but it's full of so much depth on here. Oh, another thing about DIY is that none of this has kind of like any effects trickery behind it. So it's all exactly as you heard it recorded. There's no kind of like, you know, levels being mixed and all that sort of stuff. It's exactly how it came out of the amp. But I think what kind of separates this band from a lot of others is that they are just so powerful and so kind of so unique, I think, actually, you know, like in terms of just the way they play, what they play, and kind of the ideas that they're putting together. But I have to also add that if you want to listen to them on streaming services, I don't know if you can, because I think they take down the stream, but it should be available on Bandcamp or something like that to listen to. So this is where Architect hit the big time. This is easily their most commercially successful album ever. It hit #1 here in the UK, which is absolutely huge, you know, for not only Architects, but I think the rock and metal world. But this is the album I think that they needed to make. You know, it's a long album. It takes a lot of time to listen to. But I also think this is the first time they've actually not, you know, for lack of a better word, been in Tom's shadow. You know, they've gone through something completely unimaginable, losing your friend and your bandmate. But I think, you know, this is the first time that the band have really started to kind of look into a new era of the band. And it's absolutely fantastic. There are some brilliant guest spots on here. So Winston McCall, Simon Neil, Mike Kerr from Royal Blood was particularly a favourite of mine on Little Wonder. And on this album, you know, we were looking inwards, I guess, at the selfish nature of humanity and this sort of apathy that we have towards actually healing our planet and getting better. So I think it's an absolutely fantastic album, a brilliant message, and from one of the best and brightest UK acts that we could have. So I remember first hearing Born From One Thing and thinking, wow, this is going to be absolutely fantastic. With this album, despite them always being, you know, these kind of eco-warriors, I feel like there was really an undercurrent of that just kind of intertwined with the album. It wasn't kind of like, you know, some sort of like atmospheric-y bits here and there. It was all part of one package with their signature rock and metal sound. But also I think they combined the heavier elements that might have been lacking a little bit in Magma with this kind of esoteric new direction. I might not have gone back to this album as much as I thought of, and really I thought it would be higher up on this list. But that's not to say that it's not a brilliant album. I think that, you know, tracks like Into the Storm, Sphinx, Grind, Hold On, they're all really, really well put together. And I'm really quite excited to see how they're going to translate live. Because I remember particularly being kind of, not a little bit underwhelmed, but just a bit sort of like, when I first heard Magma. And then I heard them live, and it completely changed my perception. So I think it's very much going to be one of them. So this was probably the first release I got really excited about. I just remember thinking, wow, like music is coming back, you know, things are kind of getting back to normal. Cannibal Corpse are going to release their new album. Then I found out that it wasn't just Cannibal Corpse, it's Eric Rutan as well. So if you are kind of not familiar, Eric Rutan is in a band called Hate Eternal. He's also produced Cannibal Corpse for the last sort of 5 or 6 albums, I think, off the top of my head. And really, I think that that is what brought this album so high up on my list, is because there's so much consistency with Cannibal Corpse. But with Rutan being involved, I think it really kind of like invigorated this new fire inside their creative side. They are probably one of the most successful death metal bands ever, and they are so extreme, and they've never compromised for anyone. I mean, fucking hell, this album had a woman eating her own baby on the cover. Like, that's extreme. I think it's just the enduring longevity of Cannibal Corpse that I love the most, and Violence Unimagined is that, but in 2021. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, it'd be great if you could hit that like and subscribe button. Please do let me know what you think in the comments section below, and I will see you next week for the 3rd part in my Album of the Year series. Take care, my friends.